Good afternoon, guys, and welcome to the first Industry IoT virtual workshop series for 2019. Today, we're lucky enough to be joined by Mike Loughran, who is the CTO for UK and Ireland at Rockwell Automation. Welcome, Mike.
Hi there, Dan. You well?
Yes, very well, thank you.
Good.
Mike's going to be talking a little bit about some of the work that he's been doing at Rockwell Automation around digital manufacturing and the connected enterprise. As you would have seen, there would have been a very high-level overview in the invite, so most of you probably get an idea of the direction of this session. As Mike goes along, there are several slides and videos for you guys to look at. At the bottom of your screens, there will be a chat room, a Q&A or a chat room. If you have any questions along the way, please type them in there. We will try and pause for Q&A throughout the course of the session. I would, of course, prompt Mike to stop and try and answer them as and when they come in. But between the two of us, I'm sure we'll manage it. We have 60 minutes, so over to you, Mike.
Thanks very much, Dan. Welcome, everyone. My name is Mike Loughran, and as Dan said, I work for Rockwell Automation. I'm the Chief Tech in Ireland. And today I want to talk to you around the title of "What Can Digitizing My Manufacturing Plant Do for Me?" Apologies first and foremost. I'm getting over a bit of a cold, so I may sound a little bunged up. But if you've got any questions as I'm moving through the presentation, please don't hesitate to pop them in the chat box, and we'll address them as and when they come up. Don't feel the need to wait till the end unless you really want to. I'm quite happy to take those questions as and when they come up. So why have I titled it "What Can Digitizing My Manufacturing Plant Do for Me?" Well, I think there's a lot being spoken around the whole digital journey for people, Industry 4.0, Industrial Internet of Things, connected enterprise, so on and so forth. And I think in many cases people agree with what's there and what can be done, but sometimes a few questions come up about where they start the journey. So I want to start from the beginning and just talk about what's generated the interest in the Industrial Internet of Things. Where's it come from? What's given us the impetus to start to look at this? Well, there's a number of macro trends and pressures, typically in the Western Hemisphere, but not uniquely to the Western Hemisphere. But certainly if you look at Europe, the North Americas, and into South Americas, in fact, as well. One thing that is very apparent is there are a number of similar issues and trends. And we all kind of know about the global competitiveness. We've been very much a global organization for many, many years. The days have gone where we manufacture what we produce in the UK and it's purchased in the UK. We're all used to being able to get cars from Germany, phones from China, fruit from South Africa, and whatever. So we're kind of used to that global competitiveness. I think there's some trends lately that have sped that up and actually enabled people to probably more onshore again, but it's still a global market. A large problem, though, that we are seeing is the talent shortages in the workforce and the skills gap. And certainly when I speak with customers, they're all struggling to get engineers, skilled workforce. Certainly many companies probably went through a 10 to 15 year gap where they didn't take on many apprentices, they didn't take on many graduates. And because of that, there's this kind of 45 plus workforce up to the baby boomers who are coming to retirement age. And guess what? They've got good pensions, final salary in many cases. They've had some good times. The house prices were good. So in the next 5 to 7 years, you could see 55% of skilled workforce leaving manufacturing, which is a real problem if you've got nothing to backfill it. And why is that a problem? Well, we do get feedback from people that keeping plants going with the right skill set is difficult. And if they can't find the skill set locally, well, they've got to look at how they can address that. And of course, we've seen more and more around risks, especially around not just kind of cybersecurity risks, but also the problem of intellectual property theft, risks of health and safety through cybersecurity, so on and so forth. And bring all these things together, and you start to get a little bit of a perfect storm about the issues that we're seeing. The good news is one of the main thrusts of IoT is that there's some great benefits to adopting it, which can help alleviate some of these issues. And the good news is, the majority of people who are in charge in management or in CEO roles or MD roles do believe that it can help them. The issue lies around where do they start and how do they address their biggest problems first? How do they get a roadmap to walk forward on that? And a very interesting source from The Economist there, as you'll see, is, how many leaders have a full understanding of IoT? And 38% think they do. However, 57% and 4% have little. So you look at the vast majority there, 61%, aren't fully aware or fully understanding of what it can offer. They understand there's benefits, but they're not really sure what they are. And certainly, as my role is, I do a lot of the thought leadership part of it, and my team does a lot of workshops with people to help them work through that. But again, the question comes up, where do we start and what will it offer us? During today's session, I'm going to dig into a little bit around a roadmap and how people can get on the journey, and then just start to pick out just a couple of the new digital technology offerings that can help you alleviate some of those trends and pressures that we've been seeing over the last few years. Certainly when you start to put numbers around it, and I work for an American company, so apologies for the dollar numbers, but we work in dollars in American companies. When you start to put the dollar region around it, it does start to become a numbers. It starts to become quite worrying, and the UK certainly mirrors a number of these US-centric stats. So 75% of plants are more than 20 years old. That's no different in the UK. Downtime is a massive cause of wastage. Same in the UK. Not many plants have a fully integrated philosophy, so they can't connect their manufacturing plant floor up to their enterprise level. And of course, many have suffered data breaches or cybersecurity losses. So what can the IoT world offer? Well, in Rockwell, we call it smart manufacturing or the connected enterprise. The connected enterprise drives smart manufacturing. And the idea behind this is to look at your total infrastructure based around your industrial automation and manufacturing base, but also take into account the other external factors: supply chain, finance, R&D, logistics, and a whole host of other items that sit around the whole plant floor, and actually without which you won't be able to generate any sort of product or anything else around that. And that's the good thing about IoT. It's designed to be all-encompassing. Rather than have silos of information, silos around industrial, etc., you start to seamlessly bring those different silos together to take bits of data out to produce a much more efficient way of looking into your whole business rather than having it siloed. So some of those things are being very responsive to consumers. Another emerging pattern that's been on for probably the last 5 years is consumer demands are changing in a ever so quickly basis. Once upon a time, people would be happy to get three models of car. It might be a basic, it might be a mid-range, it might be an executive. These days, people want the right coloured car with the right seats in, with the different stereo, with the different interior lights in, with different wheels, and they want it in whichever size engine they decide to have. That they want to really mass customize their own car. Cars are a big ticket item. You could say it justifies it, but actually, if you bring it down the chain, you can now mass customize training shoes. So you can pick what color stripes or swoosh you want. You can get your name on it. You can change the pattern on the bottom of it. And this is for a pair of trainers that may cost £80 to £100. So actually, the speed of consumer requirement, and people don't want to wait 6 weeks for them. And if you can't get them in 5 days, I'm sure somebody else will provide that. But even in mass markets such as sweet manufacturer want individually wrapped because they perceive them as being more hygienic, they're more likely to use them than have just one big bag of sweets, hey, individually wrap them, send them to conferences. So it really is touching right the way through the whole industrial manufacturing base. And of course, people want to reduce their supply chain risk and variability. They cannot afford to have a different product specification or raw ingredient coming in which may affect their end product, because again, that runs risk to the quality and the throughput of their plant. Disaster forecasting and recovery. We talked about some of those plants being more than 20 years old. That means some of them may have obsolete equipment in them. If you can't get the part you require and you can't get up and producing, that means you can't support your customer base. Chances are, in the food industry, if you're supplying the large supermarkets, they could fine you. If you're a seat manufacturer supplying an automotive builder, they will fine you for not being on time. And so it goes. There's regulatory pressures throughout the different industries, whether it be water and utilities, right the way through to pharmaceutical and food and beverage. Each one has a slightly different take on it, but the end result is the same. It's a decrease of the bottom line. And then nobody wants to carry more inventory. It's all about inventory reductions. We hear about just in time. There's been a lot about it lately in regards to supermarkets are running an average of 2 weeks just in time. So it's 2 weeks for that they keep 2 weeks supply basically of fresh ingredients. Anything more than that, they don't have the infrastructure in place to do that. So it starts to become very, very key that the full supply chain has visibility both up and downstream. And of course, we always want to increase our production efficiencies because, again, that's another way of driving profitability and increasing our bottom line. So smart manufacturing can offer a lot of benefits, but where do we start? Well, from Rockwell's point of view, with our connected enterprise, we have worked with a number of companies over the last 5 to 6 years, and we'll talk about a couple of case studies later on. And from that, we've gained quite a good insight and a planned methodology about how customers can start to address this issue. And guess what? It starts with an assessment and plan. And that might be what we call a map or a mini map. That's a manufacturing assessment plan. And what that involves is actually, someone from Rockwell or a couple of people from Rockwell coming to site and starting to talk to all of the key stakeholders within the plant about what drives them, what their requirements are, what their KPIs are, what they're trying to achieve. And when we talk about all stakeholders, this goes from engineering, manufacturing, operations, finance, logistics, and any other different variables within that company that has an impact on what the company does. Only by doing this can you start to build a complete plan about what actually is in place at the moment and where the big problematic KPIs are at the moment. What is keeping people awake? What is this month's real issue? Because there's always issues, we understand that. But to be successful, you have to identify the major issues and get the quickest wins, because that way you can drive continuous improvement. And I'll talk about that in a moment. So the assessment and plan is absolutely key. From that, typically what we find is that there will be a requirement to put a secure and upgrade in place. So if, for instance, there's no infrastructure in place to have a connected enterprise, that needs to be addressed. Or if there is it fit for purpose? Can we connect our plant floor to our enterprise? And can we do it securely and in conjunction with IT? Once that tends to be in place, then people then start to say, well, can we start to look at the data analytics side of it? Can we start to bring together multiple areas, start to look at what it actually really costs me to manufacture something from a point of view of energy, utilities, raw materials, logistics, to get a real good picture about what actual a manufacturing cost is, rather than it just being purely raw materials led. And then once that's in place, we're in a great position to start to optimize and collaborate and see how we can get those quick wins, those incremental gains, those 1%, but 1% per department, that then start to drive the business forward. And that, I'm just going to quick look at the Q&A here. Inventory reduction is a mythos. Depends on the industry sector. The global network becomes increasingly complex, and a single spot can stop the whole chain. How many plants in Germany stopped? So do you have proof best practice example for inventory reduction besides FMG and manufacturing industries? We do. We have a variety of different case studies around that, both in automotive and in food and beverage, and I'd be happy to talk about those. in more detail. Let me go back to that. Okay. So, and a key thing is once you've done this assessment and plan, it isn't a one-stop shop. We found that the biggest successes, even at some of the largest companies, have identified very quick wins. And when I say quick, I mean 3 months from identification, implementation, and then measurement. And when they've proven the measurement and the return on investment, then guess what? They move on to the next one. And actually, those quick wins help to drive more and more projects throughout the organization. We have been involved in a number of projects that have been a lot larger scale. And the longer the payback, the less interest tends to be in them. And this is an issue. We have found that small scale pilot projects, ROI, quick wins, have the biggest buy-in across enterprises. So it doesn't stop with the first assessment and plan. It comes back round again, and on it goes. So part of that assessment and plan is making sure that people have smart equipment. And the majority of manufacturing plants in the UK have some form of automation on them. And the good news is that automation is already generating lots and lots of data. It's already pretty smart. I think what technology has provided us over the last 5 years is a very easy and relatively cheap way of bringing that data together into context that we couldn't do before. And I'll give you a couple of examples. One example is the wide level adoption of Ethernet, standard Ethernet. In the past, I've been in automation and industry for 20 years. Many plants would have either no networks or bespoke networks, device nets, control nets, Profi nets, ESP, going way back in time. And those were great automation networks because they were very robust and they did what they said in the tin. However, what they weren't great at doing is being able to pass and share information further up the automation level or outside of the automation level. Ethernet is pretty much standardly adopted across most industries now. So the technology is there, the switching infrastructure is there, the same technology that runs the internet, we can use in our plants. That's enabled us to be able to really capture data quite quickly and quite seamlessly. It does bring up another issue around, guess what? You do need to do that in a secure manner. And when we say secure, what we mean is we don't just put Ethernet in place willy-nilly, we do it in a planned methodology. We work with IT, we follow the standards and guidelines that are already being pervasive across the IT infrastructure. We can use those down in manufacturing, and that way we know we're going against good standards and we can interface to other areas of the business in a similar manner. So very key. Now, also kind of examples of that are things such as the tablets. You know, tablets are relatively cheap to buy. Straight away, they'll enable you to do FaceTime with somebody on a plant floor without any infrastructure in place apart from Wi-Fi. Wasn't so easy before. So the machines have typically always had this information there. It's how we're accessing it and actually manipulating it for our benefit. So we talk around, you know, real-time data. Most machines will be pumping out what voltage they're running at, what kilowatts, temperatures, vibrations, and they do that as part of the automation infrastructure. Well, if you can start to take that data quite easily and quickly off that machine and do a little bit of context, I've been running for 25 hours, I may need to be maintained. Or if I start to run at more kilowatts or more amps per cycle than I was a week ago, is that a problem? We can start to put contextual information around that and pass that out to people. And then people can start to use their knowledge of that machine and knowledge of that infrastructure to make some quite critical decisions. Do I think this bearing is going to fail on this machine in 10 hours? Will 10 hours be enough time for me to actually produce the batch I need to do before I put it into planned maintenance? And then if I know that's going to happen on a certain product, do I need to optimize that? Do I need to look at maybe there's a problem further down the stream that's causing this issue and we could reduce our unplanned downtime by affecting or changing the input-output process somewhere up or downstream. This is all made quite easily available with the information that are already existing on many machines and many people's plants. It's not adding things to it, it's just taking it away, doing some analytics on it and bringing it back in. So this isn't about rip and replace, it's about using what you've already got in a controlled and measured and secure manner to give business context back in. And some of the examples, we talk about smart assets in the field and plant-wide smart assets. Many of these are already deployed. It's just a matter of connecting them up in the right manner to start to bring the data back to make them smart. The smarts are already built in, it's how we utilize it. And the area I want to kind of focus on a bit this afternoon is just a bit of a different area, really. And it's around the digital twin and the digitization of some of that information and the added benefits it can do. For those that aren't aware, the digital twin has a number of different meanings depending on what industry or what part of business you're in. From an automation point of view and design, we talk about digital twin as being a digital representation of a physical asset. And particularly, I'm going to talk about a machine, a line, or a plant, rather than an individual component. So you've got the real world asset, which could be a bottling line, it could be a capping machine or canning machine or production plant or whatever, and having a digital version of it, a digital twin, a digital representation. Now, this digital representation starts way back at when the people are designing that plant or that machine, typically in a CAD system, and they will put physical attributes against it. The actual model is already being built at that level. What we're talking about now is taking that great CAD information with many physical attributes already attached to it, weights, measures, inertias, and then matching that up with the control system. So being able to run a virtual version of your machine or your plant or your line. Now, why is that a benefit? Well, a couple of reasons. One is that you can start to pre-commission machines before they're even built or even test them, which means that you can go to build quicker, make sure you've ironed things out before you get into that phase. The second one is once it goes into production, wouldn't it be good if you want to start to change the workflow, change the product line, change the size of whatever you're doing, and you could test that before you did it in the real world. And this is where we're seeing a real push towards digital twin. And then, of course, there is the use of augmented reality. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about what we're talking about on that. Because once you can start to bring assets together into the digital world and match them with your physical world, you can quite easily and quickly start to gain benefits of it in areas that probably weren't thought of before. And before we go into those couple of use cases, I just want to put up some stats here again. We love stats. And again, we mentioned earlier, one of those macro problems, those trends, was that the skills gap is growing in most manufacturing and industrial facilities. People are retiring quicker than we're bringing people through. And then if we look here at the job openings in the US market, you can see the job openings in manufacturing are going up higher than the hires are coming in because they can't get the people in as quickly as they're leaving. And then when you look at productivity, we're seeing that that's dropping. And we're probably all aware of the productivity question in the EU and around how we can look at that. And why augmented reality? Well, firstly, augmented reality uses the data that you've got already in machines. It also starts to use the purpose of digital twinning to bring it together to help you to look at your physical assets with the digital variant of it. We've mentioned about the design part of it. I want to really focus on two areas. And those areas are, moving a box, how we can use it to address the skills gap and how we can use it to train people moving forward. So how can we get more out of the people we've got, and how can we help the people who we're bringing through, the new people bringing through, how can we help them get up to speed on a system that might be 20 years old and somebody's worked on for the last 20 years of their life and knows it inside out? How do you start to get that knowledge transfer? How do you do it quite easily without having to have somebody stood at their shoulder constantly? So it's more of a real use world. And what we have here on the video is, this is a machine, and I'm just going to pause it. It's a color printing machine. And what the guy is going to do using a standard off-the-shelf tablet is to be able to show people how they can start to change and maintain that machine. So using a look across at on the machine, the barcode tells it what the machine is, and straight away you'll see a box on the front, little handle on. That is an augmented reality. That is the digital version put over the real version, telling him which button to press. And then once he knows which button to press, which way he's got to turn the handle to be able to take that asset out. So he's being told to pull and bring that forward, and then turn the key to the left-hand side and pull that out. And then depress the button. And on from there. So a very quick example, but just one of the ways that we can start to actually help operators, maintenance people, maybe do other jobs that they're not really comfortable doing, but do it in a safe and controlled manner. And the very fact is, because you can interact the digital with the physical, you can start to put an interlock that says, if you don't do it in this manner, if the digital view doesn't see you doing this, we won't let the machine release or do whatever. So again, you're putting safety in there as well. The second example I want to show you was on a piece of Caterpillar plant, a diesel engine, and how somebody would go about changing an oil filter. Again, this could be out in a various location around the world. They may have decided that, guess what, there's an oil filter going to fail. This will bring the machine down. We need to change the oil filter. We need to drain it out. But how does somebody who's not a diesel mechanic or a diesel fitter do that easily? And that's an example of how we can do that from that point of view, just by using a standard off-the-shelf iPad or other tablet and augmented reality with a digital twin. So it's that real world application about how you help people do their job quicker, easier, and faster, but without having the skill set in place for that. I'm just going to stop there and look at the Q&A. So this isn't just vaporware. This isn't just something we've made up. We at Rockwell have been working with customers for the last 5 years. Customers such as PepsiCo, customers such as Ford, and actually customers such as ourselves. And Rockwell Automation, we have 22 manufacturing sites around the world. And we set off on our connected enterprise journey 5 to 6 years ago and implemented many of the things that we've spoken about. And we're so pleased with how we did on them. We've actually published the benefits it's given us. So as a maker of electronic devices amongst, as well as industrial software, we have a very large inventory base, whether it be capacitors, plastics, housings, IGBTs, and so on and so forth, LCDs. We managed to reduce our inventory from 120 days down to 82 days. So that's a large stock saving, which is all on the bottom line. The majority of us in America, Asia Pac, and then from we managed to reduce the lead time from distribution center order to delivery by 50%. Again, that means we don't have to carry the stock at all the different levels, which kind of adds to our bottom line. And we have managed to increase our quality. The big one for me, though, bringing all those things together, we're managing to give an increase on productivity of 5% per year. And that was in the first, I think, 3 to 4 years. As we start to get down, it's marginal gains. It's more like 2 or 3% as we bring new products online. But that productivity of 5% a year is absolutely phenomenal. It's really helped add and reduce our cost of sale. And this is something we're happy to share with people. But again, Ford did something where they put in a digital connected enterprise in their production facilities. They've rolled it around 25 out of the 40 assembly plants around the world. They're now actually generating a common approach to build of cars whether it be in North America or Europe or Asia Pac. And they've found by having commonality, they can swap best practices and actually give a similar product in a similar environment, no matter where they are, and reap benefits from that. They're also doing blueprinting, so they can blueprint plant by plant to make sure that they're all following best practice. Again, these are all case studies that I can provide if required. Okay, so kind of coming to the back end of the presentation. Oh,
sorry, Mike, sorry to interrupt you. There's a couple of more questions from Graham Ormiston, if you'd like to address those before you move on.
Okay, no, great. Thanks, Graham. So the questions are, if you can't see them, reference augmented VR and maintenance. Have you modeled complete plants, or has this been developed for individual equipments? So Graham, at the moment, we've done it typically around individual equipment and individual machines. We have done full OEM machines, but it typically is only one part of the line. That's something that we are looking at doing with some customers, but they've wanted to look at the various parts that have given them the biggest problem first. Doing a whole plant is not an issue. It just means bringing it all in and making the digital twin. But many people have started on one area that they've got an issue with, or one area that's a problematic part of plant that often needs maintenance interaction more than other bits. Follows my previous question, have you managed to get equipment supplies to provide 3D models of their equipment? That's a great question. Let's take a quick drink there. So we've been working with a number of our OEMs and end users, and it's been very interesting that when we talk with them, and let's say an end user who may get in 3 or 4 different OEMs equipment to make up a line, and we ask them what they ask for and what do they put in their specification, and quite often it's, well, we want to do X amount of parts per minute, the performance must be X, and What they don't put in there is, and we need it to be IoT capable, i.e. it should come ready to connect into our larger system. It should have managed switches. As part of the pack, we would like X, Y, and Z. Now, we also talk with our OEM customers, and we asked them a very similar question about what do you offer? And the answers were quite interesting in that, in many cases, the really clever design engineers who make these machines have all these great CAD drawings with all the physicality attributes attached to them, because and the design that in a 3D environment, and then they take that file and then they save it, they put it on a shelf, and then it doesn't get used again, because then they might do it again for another machine and another machine. And we just said, you know, have you suggested that you could offer potentially, you know, a digital twin? And they're like, well, no, but we didn't think the end user would want that. So there's been a certain amount of expectation from end user, an expectation from machine builder, and by asking the question, they've gone, all right, that's a value to you, is it? Yes. So the OEM can monetize that and offer that as a service. The end user can ask for that as part of specification and say, look, this is going to form part of a wider scheme, but it must come with the various standards. It must come in a certain manner, and it must be able to attach to a network in X, Y, and Z. Just another kind of byproduct of that was some OEMs were trying to get remote access to machines for maintenance, to offer OEE, to offer predictive maintenance, etc. And we're getting a bit of pushback. And we kind of, again, we asked why and what was the general pushback. And a very common case was, well, IT won't let us connect our machine to the network. And I went, yeah, it kind of makes sense. What you're trying to connect it with? Well, we just put on there an unmanaged switch, and we just ask for a port. All right, okay, I can see there might be an issue there. So we said, well, what if you could ask them, if we could give you the right questions to ask in regards to what you would like to see from both a remote connectivity point of view and also a diagnostics point of view, because they're both slightly different. One involves an inroad, an in path to the machine. One requires an outward path to the machine. And actually, when you look at an IT infrastructure, there'd be 2 different ways of doing that. And we are partners with Cisco. and have produced what we call the Converged Plant-Wide Ethernet Guide in conjunction with Cisco against known standards that provides support on this. And just weren't aware of it. And guess what? I wouldn't expect them to be, because they are masters of designing mechanical machines and are absolute geniuses. They're not IT, but we could help them with that. And when they ask the question of the end user IT, can we have a port X? Can you provide us with remote connectivity through remote desktop? And you provide that. We don't, we want to access it via your preferred remote connectivity solution. Nothing will come onto our site. We won't be transmitting anything remotely. We will kind of effectively dial into your machine, and everything is done locally. They got a much more positive response. So I think certainly from dealing with the OEMs, they haven't got a problem with providing a 3D model, but no one's asked them for it. And actually, they just think once the machine's designed, then it goes into the file and away it goes. Where to me, I think if we're asking for these machines, part of it should be, can you also help us maintain it in the most efficient manner, please? And can you provide us solutions that will give me predictive and prescriptive maintenance in that machine to give me the biggest uptime? And if need be, we're more than happy to talk about how we can work with you on that, provided you have the right IT infrastructure, and we can do that in a secure and safe manner. And it's something we're seeing more of, but I think we could get a hell of a lot more out of it if people ask the question. But yeah, great question. Thank you. Yeah, so the keys to a successful connected enterprise, or IoT, or Industry 4, whatever you'd like to call it. You do have to look at the organizational structure, and it does have to be a team game. Doing it at just one level, we've seen doesn't really work. We're a great one to talk about people, process, and technology. If the people aren't bought in, then you're going to struggle. Technology alone will not solve it. If the people don't use the technology, guess what? It's going to fail. And if there's no process in place that maps out the benefits to a wide variety of people and the stakeholders and their part of the game, then again, you could be looking at an uphill battle. So collaboration is absolutely key across the company. You do need information infrastructure. I can't kind of push enough how important it is to have a network that's connecting your assets. Again, you don't have to roll this against everything, but you do need to connect your major assets and make that data enabled so you can access it in the right manner, but do that reliably and secure in a secure manner using standard techniques. This is no different, ISA 99, 6443. There's a whole host of standards out there you can apply and ask people to apply. They're not new. 6443 is relatively new to manufacturing, but ISA 99 has been around for a while. Many manufacturers of automation equipment will provide guides. We do in conjunction with Cisco, so you don't have to go it alone. Technology upgrade, best will in the world. A 20-year-old asset, especially from an automation and technology point of view, was never ever designed with the industrial Internet of Things in mind. They were designed in an age when we weren't going to network. They did a certain job. I'm not saying rip and replace. I'm saying that have an eye on which assets you want to start to migrate over a number of years and what you require from a standard on that. Do you require an Ethernet port on that? Do you want it coming in with a managed switch? How will you just maybe put that on a different LAN or secure it in a different manner physically or whatever else, just to make sure you don't get caught out with older assets being a security issue. But I fully understand that there should be a plan over time. Not many people can go and rip everything out. And to me, it's a 6 to 7 year plan needs to be put in place. But if you don't have that plan, where do you start? Educate and train, develop the skills. I think the skill set of tomorrow or today is slightly different to that in the past. Certainly we see it of people coming in. It's also something to be aware of, that if you're bringing in new assets and new plant on the site, make sure that it doesn't come in with some form of programming on it or technology that your staff and your workforce doesn't understand. Make sure you start to bring that in slowly and bridge that gap and make sure people are upskilled or are skilled and aware of it, rather than letting somebody design something that they've done in HTML5 that they think will be great, but when it gets to site, it can't be maintained easily. And that's where the list of standards comes in. If you standardize around what you would like and how things should be laid out, you are more likely to get something that will be fit for purpose, but also easily maintainable for a number of years, which is what we need. And then partnerships. I strongly believe that there's probably no one company can offer you the best in class in everything. And we at Rockwell partner with Cisco, we partner with Microsoft, we partner with PTC, we partner with Panduit, and we have a very strong alliance with them to make sure that we can offer the best in breed right the way across. So from an automation perspective, into the network infrastructure, and if you want cloud, then into Microsoft. And we do a lot of testing between ourselves so we can offer you that infrastructure. And then change management, don't underestimate the challenges and rewards. Small gains can be absolutely massive to companies' overall profitability. And small projects with small gains done 3 or 4 times in a year will lead to sometimes better results and more investment than trying to do one big bang. And certainly, we look at things such as 90-day to value pilots, where the idea is we implement something in place for 90 days. At the end of it, we show the value, the return on investment, and then say, right, now you're going to invest. And that seems to be quite a beneficial thing for companies to get the buy-in across the board. But you do need to get the buy-in. You do need to have executive sponsorship in many cases and bring people on board with that. And lastly, we do believe that by adopting a digital industrial infrastructure or digital manufacturing base, that you can deliver transformational value and increase your productivity and global competitiveness. But at the same time, not putting risk around enterprise management, lowering your total cost of ownership and giving a faster time to market. But again, you've got to start the journey somewhere, and sometimes it can be a difficult thing to do. But I would suggest, please reach out to your partners and ask how they can help out with that. And that's it from me. Questions, anyone? But thank you. First, I'll say thank you very much for listening to me, and apologies again for the sniffs and the sore throat. But at least I'm doing it remotely, and I can't infect any of you. So that's one benefit of it.
Thank you very much.
Questions, anyone?
On behalf of myself and I'm sure the others on the call, really, really interesting. So thank you very much for your time. Hi, guys. We've got another 15 minutes or so allocated for the session. So I know we've had a few questions along the way, but if anyone does have any further questions, please fire away while we have Mike here on the call. I'll allow another minute or so for people to ask some questions, so please feel free.
And if anybody would like further details, I'm sure if you contact Daniel, he'll put you in contact with me. Otherwise, join me on LinkedIn, Mike Loughran, Loughren, at Rockwell Automation.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mike. Yeah, as Mike said, if anyone wants to connect separately, and if Michael's happy to, perhaps I can share your contact details, email address, or if someone has a direct question after the session. I think you have another one from Graham in there, Mike.
I do, yes. So we have done this on oil and gas. Predominantly at present, the biggest uptake has been in UAE, with connected oil fields, as we call it, which is something we're looking at around the North Sea conurbation. But the primary one has been taken up over in UAE. We've got a couple of case studies on that, which again, if you want to contact me, I can share with you. Certainly, I think there is some benefits because the oil and gas industry has been renowned at collecting data. Lots and lots of it, many large-scale enterprise historians out there. I think with that comes a little bit of trouble in regards to how do you do something with that plethora of data in a simplistic manner, especially with the skill shortages that the oil and gas industry is seeing. I think their average age, someone was telling me up in the Aberdeen oil fields, was around 57 to 58. And again, there's a great worry around people believing there. But I think there's a great opportunity up there. But we have got some case studies in oil and gas. Also in remote oil and gas pumping stations, especially from a predictive maintenance point of view, making sure that assets that are in the field that could be in inhospitable places, we're giving predictive maintenance on it and making sure they don't fail in service and they're maintained, because they're often quite expensive, but they can be in pretty poor areas. So yeah, I hope that gives a bit of a flavour on that.
Any further questions for Mike before we wrap up the session in the next couple of minutes? Right. Okay. Yeah, Mike. I had a few of the people had emailed to say that they might not be able to join for the entire session, so there might have been a couple drop out slightly early. But what I'll do is anyone that wants to follow up with me after the session, Mike, if they have any direct questions for you, I would of course reach out and perhaps facilitate the connection between the two of you. But apart from that, I think we'll wrap it up now, as it doesn't seem to be any more questions coming in. But thanks a lot for your time. Really, really interesting. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. And again, if anyone wants to follow up with Mike directly after the call, please add him on LinkedIn or contact me, and hopefully I can make the introduction for you.
Great. Thank you all very much again.
Mike,
thank you, Dan.
Thank you very much for your time. Thank you. Take care. Goodbye.
Bye now.